At the end of Star Wars Episode VII, we all wondered what was going through Luke Skywalker's mind. Well, now Mark Hamill has the information for us. He has elucidated perhaps what was going on through Luke's mind, and he's brought a lot of, well, actors do this thing where they create a story for themselves. So I could be, playing someone walking down the street in a commercial for a bank, and my backstory could be, well, she's not sure she's going to get a job, and she's having a hard time in the market, and also today her shoe broke, and just this ridiculous thing that only matters to the actor and not to anyone else, and no one ever finds that out. Well, Mark Hamill did that in preparation for Luke Skywalker, specifically going into The Last Jedi.
Yeah, I think it's funny that he put this huge backstory on what amounted to no dialogue and 20 seconds of staring, but good on you, Mark, because it's it's an interesting storyline. Like, it's basically he has this idea that, he got married and he had a child who killed himself with his lightsaber.
See, the problem is with this is a lot of the Luke Skywalker background that we have now is no longer canon. It's in the legends. So all those books you spent time reading are no longer canon. They can be canon in your heart. I've done a video on what is canon and doesn't matter before. But I think no matter what I say, people will want their headcanon to be canon. I keep saying Luke instead of Mark. Mark specifically talked about what he was thinking about Luke, saying actors like backstories, they want to know motivation and all those things, and it's such a blank slate. If you look at it intellectually, I realize that it's not my story anymore, so that Luke did or did not do in the intervening years aren't really important to the audience at this point, but I have to work it out for myself. I made notes that he fell in love with a woman who was a widow and had this young child. He left the Jedi to raise this young child and marry this woman, and the child got a hold of a lightsaber and accidentally killed himself. It's nothing to do with the story, but when I think about gun violence and you read these tragic stories of kids getting hold of their parents' guns and killing a sibling or themselves, I had to go to really dark places to get where Luke needed to be for this story. Sort of tested out some of my ideas just to make sure I wasn't in conflict with anything. Rian Johnson was really nurturing in that regard, encouraging me to find ways to justify the actions in the movie. But like I say, that little story I told about Luke leaving the Jedi and getting married, that's not officially what happens. Except now it is to me.
You have brain cannon. Yay, brain cannon. Mark spends a lot of time with Luke in his head because at Star Wars Celebration, he also mentioned how he was bummed that there was not a moment of sort of Luke being there when Han died. Because he always said in his mind, because obviously everyone's heard the story, they've been trying to kill him since like the second movie. And he always imagined that he would be there. And sort of that moment that Rey had in The Force Awakens when Han gets killed by Kylo Ren, where she screams, Mark always imagined that that would be him. So I feel like this is just the tip of the iceberg of the brain canon that Mark has made for this character. In fact, I've even heard how he's, maybe written some pages on what he thought before they did The Force Awakens and JJ came out and did what he did. Mark said he had, pages on what he thought could be the next tale in the saga.
What was it?
I don't know, but he mentioned that he had thought about it. Basically, in fact, it was at the Carrie Fisher dedication at Star Wars Celebration where he mentioned, he had some things written down, then he read JJ's script and was like, well, it's garbage and like shoot that, he's like, this is where you get the writers who do it because they do it better. But yeah, I'd be curious to hear what those pages were, because again, I think any guy that's been associated with a character for that long,
decades,
yeah, you're gonna think about
lifetime.
it. You're gonna think about where they would go next.
For sure. And I kind of agree that I think Han's death needed to have more resonance than it did. And I have been reading things that said they're not gonna spend too much time mourning him in the next Star Wars.
Yeah.
Which is a shame. I know Harrison doesn't want to do it anymore, but the character is and was important to us. So I think it should continue, that spirit should ring out and continue to affect the characters that are now the new main characters.
You don't have hope for Solo filling in that happy void for you?
We'll see. We'll see. I don't know what's going to happen with that.
I don't think anybody knows what's going to happen with that one. It's a little screwball right now with everything going on.
Yeah, I mean,
look,
maybe.
Movies
I like
by
Donald Glover.
I like Donald Glover. I like. Look, movies by committee are a dangerous thing.
Yes.
But from everything I read, Rogue One was a movie by committee.
I like what they ended up doing with it. And I know there were some other ideas.
And they made a good movie. And I think the more you hear about these Hollywood backstories, movies by committee happen more often than not. And you only hear about them when they fail. Mm-hmm. When they work out, nobody talks about it.
Well, I do appreciate what Mark Hamill brings to this as an actor and as bringing it on the intellectual level as well. There were days before that this new trilogy was coming out where he used to come over to TYT and hang out with us.
Oh, my Lord.
Yeah. And he would talk about his views on politics, on social issues, and it was really good, very well thought out, very strong.
Your life is so much better than mine.
This is years ago. I have a photo, and I will maybe put it in this video later, but I did like that he brought up, how dangerous this is, how a lightsaber is not necessarily something you should be waving around, and we present it as a child's toy, but it is actually a deadly weapon, at least in the canon of this story, which it does matter. I know it's this crazy space adventure, but stories matter and they do reflect into real life. And the idea that he has brought this level of weapons are dangerous. Maybe they shouldn't be in the hands of children. I appreciate that.
Yep. Yeah, it's a laser sword. Still doesn't make sense in my head.
It doesn't
what
make
happened
sense
to Obi-Wan.
scientifically.
Like, that's the one thing if I have a big quibble with A New Hope, and there's plenty of things to quibble about A New Hope. Obi-Wan's death bothers me way more than Han's.
But it was such a cool fight scene, Jacqueline. It was not. I don't think that. Please don't give me that look.
I know you don't think that. But and then he disappeared. Like it's just it's the only time it's just disappear.
It's never happened like that ever again.
Or I guess they did with Yoda. Whatever. You know what? The mass and bodies disappearing in the Jedi. I just think that's their thing. So whatever.
Well, hopefully that's not what we're going to do with the fate of Luke Skywalker and The Last Jedi, but he is The Last Jedi, so it's the same thing. But I mean the movie itself. Audience, do you think that his view of Luke Skywalker is the correct view, or is it not really, I guess, his anymore? As he said, please let us know on Facebook and Twitter. Yeah.